You're listening to this episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and leave us a comment. It would greatly benefit the show.
Welcome to Movie Baiters with the Farx brothers. I'm Kyle.
I'm Kirk.
And we are here with, do you prefer Eleanor or Nora?
No, definitely Nora. Eleanor is my legal tender name, my birth certificate name. But
your legal tender name?
Yeah, most people...
When people pay you, they pay you as...
Well, that's like what my doctor says. They're like, Eleanor, listen, you don't have a tumor. And I'm like, okay, sweet. But then Nora is like, hi, Nora, let's go out for brunch, right? Like, it's two different, like... As a child, they would look me up in the phone book and be like, hey, there's no Nora in here. And I'd be like, no, because it's Eleanor. And, it was kind of cool. But yeah, just Nora.
You know, I should be sensitive about you implying you might have had a cancer scare?
I don't. No, that was purely a bit. 110% a bit. No, God, no.
Because I was going to ask you if you're familiar with Kindergarten Cop.
I've heard about Kindergarten Cop.
It's not
a tumor? Yeah.
It's not
a tumor. It's not a tumor. I don't think that was good.
You go first. Do your best, Arnold.
I did. That was
your best, Arnold?
Yeah.
It's not a tumor.
It's not a tumor.
Can you do it?
Yeah. It's not a tumor.
These are great. This is good for an Olympiad podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
You're in the interview section, so we're not to that yet. Everyone's already heard it. It's not a tumor.
It's a lot better than mine.
I've been doing Arnie for like 30 years or something.
Wow.
My adopted parents made me do it for our pastor once when we were over to their house for dinner. Do the trick, Kyle. Do the trick that explains why you're a weirdo. Do it for the audience, please.
No, my parents had me caw like a peacock, so you're not the only one.
Wait.
Wow, your parents didn't love you guys.
I'm not doing. No, we're not doing that here.
What is it? Is it like a?
Well, it's a two-part where it's a caw, and then there's a secondary like note at the end where it's a right. So it's they go right, like, but then like they would have me do it at the top of my lungs outside of the 2001 Dodge Caravan minivan with the door open. So
wow.
For who? Just them?
Kind of, yeah. They were delighted by it. They were just delighted that I just screeched and screeched and screeched. And I was like, sure, why not? Because I was 8.
Sure.
Yeah.
Was it only when you were 8? Like, did it start younger than that? And did it continue afterwards?
God. So I think there's people online who are like, oh, I did that as a kid. And, like, oh, I'm so weird for doing that. Oh, remember when I did that? Cringy. And I'm just like... I think about my childhood and I'm like, yeah, you guys like don't even play. Like like I don't know, I think about kids like, they stick their hands in their mouths and then they stick their hands in their pants and then they touch everything and then to them it's just, par for the course. As an adult you're just like, oh my God, was I like that? And the answer is probably, and then if not, then I don't know, something's wrong with you.
Hey, at least it wasn't recorded, right? And put on YouTube.
Yeah. I like me making the noise on YouTube? No, because that was in the year of our Lord, like 2006.
Now people know how old you are. You were born in the late 90s.
Yeah, I was very tail end of the 90s, 98. I turned 27 last month, so hip hip hooray.
I know, happy birthday. Did I wish you happy birthday on your birthday?
I don't remember. Maybe not.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I don't even remember what I did for my birthday. Lately, the weeks and weekends and days are just kind of a blur, and I'm just like, oh, that's kind of weird. I don't know. The geriatric is closing in, perhaps.
We were supposed to ask you which of your multi-hyphenates you like to go by. I just want to confirm, I have a 3 and a 5-year-old in the house. Yes, they do touch things and then touch their mouth. It drives me insane. And the 3-year-old and I we're going to get back. So think about how you want to describe your hyphenates. 3-year-old and I are at the mall today because the 3-year-old wanted to walk and we figure the more she exerts herself, the more she'll sleep.
Yeah.
We pass a mom and her daughter and I'm trying to figure out like, why do they like look like they're boosting something off of this wall or something like that, but they'd stuck their phone to the wall and then the daughter was doing a TikTok or something and I don't know why, but like an idiot I lead down to my 3-year-old like, they're doing a TikTok. Those women are doing a TikTok. And I don't know what I'm setting her up for in life, but it's good that her mother is her cinematographer to a degree. You're a cinematographer. See what I did there?
I did see what you did there. That was clever. That was...
The audience heard what I did there.
Yes. Listen, I don't think you're doing too bad, because I remember my dad, when I was born, he bought a pack of cigars, and then I'm assuming he didn't smoke them in the hospital. I'm assuming he smoked them outside of the hospital. But yeah, no, it was just me and him while my mom was at work, and gosh, like, we'd go to the park and I'd dig around in the sand and he'd let me get all filthy and then come home and take a bath, right? So, I don't know, flinging dirt in the wind, that's kind of peak kid activity, I suppose.
That is peak kid activity. My kids have been getting dirty right after bath very recently, and they took a bath and then they immediately went and dug in the dirt afterwards. I'm doing a terrible job of interviewing you, Nora. When did you get involved with film, and how did you decide what you want to be?
That's a fantastic question. Let's see. So, growing up, my dad always had an eye for photography. He was pretty creative, and not necessarily in the traditional sense, but in like his ability to like see and his proprioception. Anyway, he was
proprioception. You just did a wavy thing with your hand.
Yeah, proprioception. Yeah, because he was really, really good at all kinds of sport, but then also loved to make beads, and then also took really good photos. And this man, didn't even really wear glasses until he was like damn near 35, which is the same for me, by the way. Viewer, you can't really tell, but I am not wearing glasses nor contacts, and won't need to for probably another decade.
Wow, how do you know that?
Yeah.
Let's rub it in, all right.
I'm sorry, I had my first
contacts.
eye exam because I'm like, what if I have glaucoma and I didn't even know it, because spoiler alert, I never had to go to the eye doctor to adjust nothing, right? Because these eyeballs are still basically 20/20. So anyway,
brag about it. Yeah.
They gave me a prescription and they said, you know what? And they threw it in the trash and they said, I'm not even going to bother giving this to you.
Okay.
And I said,
wild.
Sick. And then I left. But anyway, so I love to draw. I love to watch a lot of anime. I love to watch movies. I read all kinds of books. And so I was very much a curious and creative kid, noticing everything, was really expressive. And so then I got to college, and initially I was going to go to be a neuroscientist, something like that. I started at the U of M in the College of Biological Sciences, and then I realized that, so as much as I absolutely love understanding science and I love explaining it to other people, it's not necessarily a field that I feel like if someone said, invent, a branch of it that's completely yours, right? I don't know if I could do that nearly as eloquently as I could with film. And I learned that when I took my first film class. It was Intro to Moving Images, and where I learned about the sequentiality of images, in addition to like how that differed from taking photos and then putting them in a gallery, and how that sequentiality differed, as well as comic work and how that sequentiality differed, and then all of those things and their relationship to time. I leaned more towards film because I liked how there was a temporal element. I liked how there was a musical element. I really had a thing with movies and sequential images and music. And that's probably because I'm a synesthete. For what that is, it's like it can be a number of different things, and for me it's when I hear music, I suppose in like a third eye sense, see shapes and colors and sometimes textures, and it's the same thing for the alphabet or numbers. So I think there's definitely a relationship between what I see with my eye and then what I hear with my ear, in a way that's, I suppose, even more, I don't think distinct is the right word, but there's a different experience going on. And so I think I naturally tend to lean more towards the arts in general, but then also towards music and moving images and film. So anyway,
I want to pause you. What was that term you were going to say?
Synesthesia.
Synesthesia. I've heard of this.
Yeah, and it's not, I think more people have it than they know, because what person necessarily goes around and asks, hey, I see O as an orange color. You see that too, right? And this other person goes, no, right? Like, not very many people have that conversation. And I happened to have mine because there was like doing math I just needed more time with it, because it was like almost like needing a time to translate between what was on the page and then whatever system was going on in my head. And so that's what eventually led to this whole synesthetic branch of what I know as myself. So getting back to film, I really fell in love with editing. I fell in love with cinematography, and I liked creating projects and being able to direct them. And I think that directing cinematography and editing editing, are all very closely related. So it's almost like I understand why there's the producer, editor, director, cinematographer combo that appears sometimes. And then I also understand why people who are really close tend to take on an amalgamation of those roles for each other. Because it's a very extremely tightly knit.
The community locally, you mean? Oh, sorry. You're just saying the roles of doing editor and director and cinematographer are all very similar.
Very, very close together. And at this time, I was also doing some animation on the side. I was planning to get onto set and to do like a more narrative style, like short film, and work with other actors, actresses, and crew members. This is in, I believe, 2020.
Our fact checkers will make sure that that's correct.
Yeah.
About a half decade ago.
Yeah. And I remember leaving for spring break, and then that's when COVID happened. And so then all of the studios were closed. My own personal practice space that the U bequeathed me for being a BFA member, that was inaccessible. No access to equipment, no access to mentors, no access to even the film developing lab, which asterisk, I absolutely love editing, developing film in the darkroom. But so all of that kind of disappeared. And in the chaos of that, they did what they could, and they were like, use iPhones or like whatever. And so they had to completely rearrange their curriculum. And so I graduated, and then it was another, I'd say like at least a year and a half or 2 years where you couldn't get on a set and you couldn't do any of that. And so I put a pin in making film traction, because I thought, and specifically in the Twin Cities area, because I thought I was going to go to grad school, or, I was looking into that, or alternate ways of gaining that set experience. And so I was in Indianapolis for a while because I needed a change of scenery after being stuck in my family's home, looking at the same four walls for 2 years. At the time, I was looking at IU Bloomington in Indiana, which has a surprisingly fantastic film program for being in the middle of, Indiana.
Hey, Iowa has a great writing program, according to an episode of Girls I saw.
Yeah, they also...
That's 4 years ago now, though, right?
Do you think those things change overnight?
So Iowa will also... I forget specifically which program, but there's a film school in Iowa that is a fully funded MFA program, which is rare because there's only like 3 of them in the country.
Meaning if you're going there for your master's, you can be funded as
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, and the only other routes to kind of do that without paying out the ass is... So I learned that most prestigious schools, including USC, UCLA, Harvard, etc., they all have these film PhDs. A film MFA program at like USC, for example, you would go for 3-4 years, pay a bunch of money, and then come out with an MFA. And then for these PhD programs, lots of them are fully funded. You go in for 3 to 4 years and you come out with a PhD and you blow by the MFA. So if you have a bachelor's, granted, there's some caveats to that too. Like I'm guessing they want you to actually have gone to a conference on, the papers that you're going to be writing. But it's essentially the university paying you to, be a little, thought monkey and then like write a bunch of papers, and then potentially also, that ties into the film classes there. That's like one of the only other pathways besides community college. Such as MCTC, for example.
MCTC is a local community college
yes.
where we've had a bunch of their
yes.
graduates on the show.
Yes, and one of them, what festival? There's a festival adjacent to cons. It's called... I wish I remembered it before I brought it up, but one of their students was there, like a weekend ago, for this festival that gets you to network in France and all of that, and I believe they pay for it. So yeah, MCTC, at least this year's cohort, is very strong and very passionate. And so yeah, other than that, like, the film MFA, that's if you have like a bunch of money just laying around and 3 years of time to kill, right? So
I wanted to ask about transferring from the sciences school to a BFA at U of M, but
yeah.
I'm more interested in how you got to work for NASA when you
Oh
were...
yeah. Well,
Oh, wow,
okay.
yeah.
It was either the tail end of 2018 or the tail end of 2018. So I was in the honors program at the University of Minnesota, and then I was also in the BFA program. And either one of those or both of those required an internship. Growing up, I absolutely loved space science. I still love space science, rocketry, all of that. I remember the Mars rover landing on, of course, Mars. So NASA was always a big part of my childhood, something that I was always really excited about when it came on like Nova on PBS. I literally was in the basement of one of the U's libraries, and I was literally mulling over to myself like, well, at the time, because I didn't understand that, there were pathways that bridged these two worlds. I was kind of distraught. I was like, well, I want to do this, creative path, but I'm also really interested in this NASA path. And then literally I saw, we had some sort of official NASA texts just in that library. And then suddenly it occurred to me, I was like, I wonder if NASA has internships. I literally just thought about it one day.
So you were inspired by a book in the basement of your college library to apply for an internship at NASA.
Yeah, because so there's two NASA logos. There's the worm and there's the meatball. And the worm is the red one that just says NASA, and then the meatball is the globe with the the
spaceship thing?
Yeah, the spaceship around it. And for a while they were like, you can never use the meatball, only the worm. And then after that they said, never use the worm, only the meatball. Now they're like, use whatever you want. So I saw the meatball and I was like, oh yeah, duh. And so literally I remember sitting down in Kaufman Union with a laptop on my lap, with everyone milling around with Herberts and Gerberts or whatever. And I was just...
Free plug for Herberts and Gerberts, that little piece of
free ads.
uncooked... Yeah, it's uncooked bread that you get in the sandwich.
Yeah, and kind of wilty lettuce and sad guacamole.
Super gross. What's your Herberts and Gerberts order?
Oh my god, I got the Narmer back in the day. I haven't.
What's the Narmer? Sounds like something you call a loser at you across the quad. Hey, Narmer.
Yeah, no.
What are you looking up NASA or something, nerd?
Listen. The Narmer bread, and then it was turkey, and then it was provolone, and then it was avocado spread, and then lettuce.
It's pretty basic.
Yeah, I mean, you put some chips on that.
Basic
it was
sandwich.
really just salty.
Did you toast it?
They don't toast over there.
They don't toast at Herberts?
No, it's
No,
not.
I know, I've never been.
Potbelly Sandwich Works.
So the last time I was in an Herberts and Gerberts, I was at a film festival riding around my one wheel, and it was just before closing time of a bunch of places. I think it's 1 a.m. And I knocked on the window and they let me order something, and it was
Taste
great.
something extra in there, like spit. I don't know.
No,
The closing time. Then
I
can make you a
saw them
sandwich.
make it. They were cool about it.
right.
So I'm okay with the free ad we've given to her. That's why I asked what you got. And
Oh.
I just remember a bunch of meat and cheese, and then talking to some other guy at the hostel that was, to be honest, kind of hostile towards me.
Oh my god.
I've been places. You've been to NASA, and you were telling us how you got there.
Yeah.
What's the interview process like for an internship?
Oh my god. So, asterisk, because I had to apply 2 times. So there's 2 application cycles. And so, the
You
second
didn't get
time...
into NASA on your first try?
No, unfortunately. And apparently, the really wacky thing happened where someone had found my profile on, usajobs.gov, and they were like, well, do you want to come work in my lab? I'm trying to remember here. I remember it was like a Zoom call, and they asked me just some basic questions about my background, and then I remember it was, I believe, it was some anniversary of them being an agency. I believe it was this is embarrassing now because at the time I remembered it, but now it's, And so I mentioned that, and then they asked me what my favorite instrument was to play in high school, and
Which was?
percussion.
Yeah.
I love playing the timpani. Yeah.
Triplets on the timpani? Don't they do a lot of sorry, I played
That's
the
okay.
What?
Keep going.
Isn't that a thing that you do on the timpani is often used? Oh, it's the triplet beat. I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay.
don't play music
They're
well.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like, you roll on them. And they used to be, so the Germans invented what would eventually become the timpanis to like scare birds and creatures out of the trees to then hunt them. Or, what would become the Germans invented what would become the timpani. And then they were like, you know what, this is kind of musical. And then they, put some animal skin on there and then boom, 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 right? And then you have from like, that Robin Hood theme.
What do you call that when you do da-da-da?
A trill, maybe? Or a roll?
Okay, yeah.
Like you do like you don't do a traditional roll on a timpani because a traditional roll on a snare, you let the bounce back fuel the next, and then you go. But then the timpani, it's just manual bump, 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 bump. Like you're not supposed to roll because it dampens the sound, which I learned from my student teacher. Thank you, wherever you are, student teacher. I have forgotten your name.
Was this in high school?
This was in high school. And
how much of this did you give them in the NASA interview?
Oh my God, I think it was really brief. I remember being really nervous. They didn't ask like, anything super duper bonkers crazy. I just remember knowing that I nailed the interview when I mentioned that it was a NASA anniversary, and I asked them what they were doing, and they were impressed with something I had made, like a 30-second little short in like After Effects for a class. I think they liked who I was professionally, and I think they liked the passion that I had. And I'm trying to remember if there was a GPA requirement or if there was a writing portion.
You were an honors student. It didn't matter, did it?
That's fair.
I listened. Also, you brought up birds in two different ways in this interview so far.
Birds?
Yeah, because she did a bird noise when she was an 8-year-old. And
Yeah.
the timpani was specifically
comes back
invented
all the
by
way
the people
around.
that would become the Germans, too.
Yeah.
So I think there's some ornithology going on at the
Definitely.
Peterson home.
Absolutely. I'm trying to remember what Ad Astra means. Fly high? I forget.
Ad Astra's the Brad Pitt movie.
Yeah, it's a Brad Pitt movie.
Ad Astra is the Latin phrase that NASA uses all the time.
For what?
Well, they're seals and stuff.
They're seals? Oh,
Yeah.
on the seals.
Yeah,
Yes,
on
yes.
the seals. In their pomp and when they're allowed to have pomp and circumstance, which some years they are and some years they're not. Like when I was there, they were like, we literally cannot make stickers because the president says we can't. And well, it's not that direct, but like
Who
because
was the
NASA's
president
actually
at that time?
You know which president it was.
it was yeah.
What-
it was
Was it forgets if he ate his oatmeal, or was it the one who has the best, the most beautiful, It was one of those two.
yeah.
One of the old ones.
I remember specifically when I got this internship, I went home for Thanksgiving at some point, and then all my relatives just ran to me, just foaming at the mouth with conspiracy theories. And
About
I was
NASA?
like, whoa, yeah. Like, they were like, did you know that Werner von Braun worked there? Or like,
Yeah.
did you know that, what, the other day I was cornered by a coworker who was just like, what people don't understand is that, so NASA is a federal agency, but it also operates somewhat independently. It does not have a cabinet member.
Sure.
And this has been known forever and ever and ever. So that changes how the federal government interacts with this specific agency. But some people, misread that, and then they think that, then there's all kinds of room for conspiracies or like, Nazi stuff. I get quite a bit.
And
Or
NASA?
Russia stuff.
Well, yeah, Operation Paperclip, right?
Oh,
Something like
That
that.
was-
No, that was a real thing. Is that we
it
took
was
Nazis
real, but
and-
it wasn't introduced by the NASA. I always on the Nazis.
if you've got people that understand the sciences at a certain level, and it's like, well, do you kill them or do you, reutilize them?
So
And it's the
NASA
40s.
equals Nazis.
60 million people died in a
So-
world war.
21 letter off.
What?
No, wait, no, it's 2. NASA, Nazi,
Oh,
2 letters off.
Oh,
Whoa.
damn.
the Nazis have come up a lot on this show.
Oh.
And because of pop culture and lately. And, we talk a lot about Kanye, so
Kanye hasn't come up.
Kanye hasn't. Jesus walks, baby.
One of my new favorite Kanye quotes is when he's like watching The Incredibles and he's relaying The Incredibles to the interviewer, and he's like, something like I'm going to butcher this, but he said something along the lines of, I like The Incredibles, wife got a big butt. And it like, Kim next to him is like, what? And then he's like, something about, where everyone gets to fly. God, I just.
Kids know about big old butts. I know this from talking to children. Against my will, they're telling me about big old butts in their life. Because once one of them points out a big old butt, and then, because this was an issue, I'm not going to say with which one, but they'll know. God. Was this a recent Kanye?
This was like 2009 Kanye.
Oh, when he was still sane?
Before he wasn't sane. He just wasn't on the meds yet, because then he goes through the med period, and then, the very sad recent stuff. So you're at NASA, and they don't ever give you the secret Heil Hydra or whatever.
Oh my God, never. No. If anything, we like to go to this one, like, basically it was hanging out with a bunch of really interdisciplinary, really smart, really kind people. And, we'd all go to, like, this one Chinese buffet for lunch. Like, our mentor would be like, all right, get in the car, kids. And we'd all get in the car, go off base, and then go to it was called, like, it was probably just called China Buffet. But, with the red lettering. Yeah, no, nothing about Nazis, nothing like that. No.
What was your day-to-day while you were there? What type of projects were you working on?
So I was initially slated to. They had just gotten they called it the Cave, and they'd had one since the 90s, and it's the Cave automatic virtual reality environment. And it was in the Groove Lab, the Glenn Reconfigurable User Interface Environment. They love their little acronyms. They had acronyms for everything. And as someone who then became their pseudo PR person, I was like, how do I explain to the public that there's a lab inside this other? Yeah. So in addition to occasional bureaucracy, there was navigating all of these acronyms. So this cave. If you imagine a room, and then there are 4 screens and 4 projectors, and then there's some hardware on top of them. And then you wear these glasses that have little bulbs on the corners. And so the whole system was designed for you to bring in, for example, like if you're working in AutoCAD, bring in an AutoCAD design, throw it in the center of the room, have everyone pop on these glasses, and then you could walk around the room and there'd be a 3D model right there that you could interact with, you could, walk through, and it would maintain its shape and proportion no matter if you crouched, jumped, laid down. And so
could you scale it up and scale it down while using
Yeah, so the lab that I worked for, the graphics and visualization lab, their history started off really intertwined with NASA's history of supercomputing and Cray supercomputers.
Supercomputers?
Yeah. Eventually, through a long string of happenings, they wanted a lab that would look at how we interface with computers and how we interface with data, and then come up with new ways of interfacing, not only, with computers, with the data, with how we present data, with how we present visual information. Scientific visualization. There we go. So a lot of my work was understanding that, and then also understanding how the cave came into play. So it was kind of, if someone had a proprietary need for it, they could come in and then use it for proprietary reasons, or we could show off what was possible if someone had a proprietary interest with our research. Or, that's a very common place where we'd take people for tours. We were a lab that people loved to come to because we had the VR headsets. We had the simulators. We had all kinds of cool stuff that we would take around the Ohio, Akron area, because the Glenn Research Center, where the Jeeves lab is in Cleveland, Ohio, right next to the airport. And if you go to the airport, you will see the big meatball on top of their big old hangar. Mm-hmm.
Wait, which airport in Ohio?
It is the main one, the Cleveland International. It's just right outside of Cleveland.
I think I've flown out of there. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
My wife could tell me because we flew in and out of Ohio once for a wedding near in the state nearby.
Cleveland surprised me because it was a really wonderful place. And I learned that when people say, beware of East Cleveland, they don't mean Cleveland, the city, the East Side, they mean a particular city called East Cleveland.
Oh,
so that is an important distinction, dear viewer, listener, not viewer. How could you see?
They might have eyes. They might
That's
look
right. You might have
through.
eyes. Listen through your ears, your eye hole ears. My main task was to figure out how to tell the public about our new cave.
Who's the public in this circumstance? Because to me, what it sounds like is you'd say, hey, go tell people that manufacture very expensive things, let's just say for rocket science, that work at very, profitable companies that rhyme with like schmooze, malin, schmun, or schmoing, or, like they would give large donations or whatever they have to be for tax purposes to NASA to then go use that lab and come in secret with their, folks that need to work on, here's a new rocket part. Or they just use that technology and build one themselves, probably.
That's more common. Like, we didn't have any dealings with Boeing. We didn't have any dealings.
I didn't say Boeing.
You didn't say Boeing.
That's the only one I caught.
We didn't have any dealings.
I should have said Schmraytheon.
Yeah. Like it wasn't like that. It was very much like just US citizens, the literal community.
I hope people working for our military industrial contractors are mostly US citizens and not folks who have a much higher likelihood to not be working towards the interest of the country.
Well,
but all that aside.
My mentor and the man who ran the lab, we did everything to benefit like the average person. Very much focused on educational and STEM and STEAM education. And
you said STEM and STEAM because you're including the arts in the STEAM portion?
Yes, because I know some people hear STEM and they know what that means, and some people hear STEAM and they know what that means, and then there's some people still like me who know that it's all the same thing. But some people aren't ready to hear that. So
I'm not ready to put the arts in. I'm a STEM conservative.
Yeah, no, there's people who are like, it's very separate, and one will kill you, and I'm like, well, I don't know, because if we don't pay attention to one, then we lose literacy in literally everything, and then lo and behold, people are easier to absolutely lure with propaganda when they don't really know how to read, and then read plus, right? So it's definitely STEAM. But
that was a good bait.
Yeah.
I'm not I don't disagree with you, so I'm not really going to bait you, but I'm going to try to say something like, oh, but the capitalist need of people that can do engineering is different than someone that can do visual arts.
Yes, but both disciplines benefit from both kinds of thinking. It's less about, what people need and more about what education we give them access to and how we parse those ideas in their minds. Because not that long ago, math and philosophy were the same thing. And we parse them out now because it's easier to market people on the idea of, they are good or they are bad, we are good, right? It's easier to, I suppose, convince people that the arts aren't worth saving if they neglect to tell them that at one point it was all one Mobius strip, right? So I
when
don't.
You were saying Mobius strip, I got to call you out on because that's like most people would know that from Tony Stark bringing it up in Endgame. Yeah, and the thing you described, the cave, basically is what Tony. I can tell you don't know this reference, which is great. Avengers Endgame, Tony Stark builds a Mobius strip using basically the equivalent of the cave, but it's a hologram in his living room, and he can turn it around, shrink it, and scale it up. That's all I knew to ask you about that because that's what Tony Stark could do, and they probably just stole it from NASA.
So they definitely did.
Based off real science?
Yeah, just real science look like science fiction. Well, we don't have holograms yet, you see, but we're all cool.
Do.
Hatsune Miku would beg to differ.
Okay, hit me with that again.
Yeah, Hatsune Miku. This was literally almost 20 years ago when Japan literally was like, what if we made something different than MIDI? Which was the, standard for a long time for simulating musical instruments through a computer. And they went one level deeper and they said, what if we were able to simulate human voices? And so they came out with the Vocaloids. And the Vocaloids, there's different ones for different flavors of human intonation. And I don't know if, most of them are Japanese for that specific language and intonation, and they have expanded their product offerings to other languages. Each of these offerings comes with its own mascot, and then also its own lore. And so Hatsune Miku has been around literally for like 20 years. And so she has concerts and she has popular music. And sometimes people will make music and then use her plugin and then call it a Hatsune Miku track.
It's a hologram?
Yes. Literally, they have...
Is this like a theremin or something?
No. So she is so popular.
You know what a theremin is?
I know what a theremin is.
Can you explain it to my brother?
Yeah, what's a theremin?
Yeah.
You move your hand with like a wooden...
Yeah, it's literally, again, like, tying it back to Jivas, it's an input device. And input device, the graphics and visualization lab.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's all differing input devices. And turns out, when you design input devices a certain way, people will interact with them a certain way.
Nintendo.
Yeah. So
what?
It's true.
Same part of the world where the theremin and the Nintendo come from is what she's describing.
Do you know the principal on Arthur, the television show and the book
about the
series for
aardvark?
kids? Yeah, the aardvark.
Who has a dog?
Yeah, that's really weird.
So does Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, the principal plays it there.
Pluto and Goofy never figure shit out. Sorry, the principal on Arthur.
Yeah, the principal plays the theremin for a talent show.
That's right.
And that was my first exposure to the theremin.
So the hologram has been around because of this Hatsune Miku?
Well, I don't know if it was originated there specifically. However, when she plays live, every year they come out with a new concert tour, and they throw a lot of money, or at least they do a lot of research into how to get better and better holograms. Literally, people go see her, and at first she was just kind of this projection between these two panes of glass, and I think now there's not even a glass. She's just on stage through certain types of optical wizardry.
Didn't they do a hologram of Tupac?
Yeah, this is just Tupac.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Do you know who Tupac is?
I do.
Okay. Good. Sing one of his songs. Sorry. He doesn't sing.
You don't consider rapping singing?
I consider him a lyrical artist. I don't consider him a singer.
Okay.
Like what Beyonce does versus what Tupac does is different. Beyonce could do what Tupac does. I don't know that Tupac could sing Single Ladies. You made and this is what we'll end on, a film for Film Score Fest. Tell us what that process was like. Charlie, come on the show, damn it.
Oh, goodness. So I remember I was back in the Twin Cities about a year ago, and I was just trying to meet as many people as possible, and I met Charlie when I was at a MBwTFB meeting. It was the first thing I went to in this town.
But you didn't know about the thing last Thursday? The Thirsty Thursdays.
Yeah.
I knew about Thirsty Thursdays. It was, I think I received their emails, but maybe I forgot. I don't know. For some reason, I didn't clock it, and maybe I didn't clock it because you invited me to it.
You're not on Facebook because you're smart.
That's right. Yeah, no, I'm not on Facebook. So then Charlie hands me this card to come to the kickoff for Film Score Fest, and I was like, sweet. So that's also how the first time I was at the St. Paul Neighborhood Network, because that was where the meeting was held. And I remember them saying, oh yeah, no, we are going to, you're going to make these movies, and then we'll pair you with a composer, and then we are going to show it at the History Theater, and which was the initial pitch. And I remember being really excited, and I'd say, it had been maybe 6 years since I had committed to a project that was more than just, something that I was doodling or thinking about for a couple hours, because it's just, the infrastructure wasn't there, or, it wasn't cohesive in a way where I realized it was there. I teamed up with, at the time, my new film friends, Chris Wells and Andrew Schmidt from High Horse, and I'd been helping out with their film at the time, and then they let me borrow their camera, and they let me borrow Andrew. And I initially had a bigger plan for it, but the shoot ended up being kind of weird. It was one of our first times working together, so, you know, certain parts were rusty, right? Like, the memory card like filled up right away because it hadn't been emptied and stuff like that. So anyway, I was happy with what we got out of it, was happy with how I felt getting familiar again with Premiere, getting familiar again with the process of making sure that the color data coming off the camera was similar to what was showing on screen, was similar to what I was exporting, etc. Because there's like 5 million things that you forget when you just haven't gotten it. It's like riding a bike, right? And I remember seeing it at the History Theater, and I was really happy. My family was there. Chris and Andrew were there. My roommate Nicole was there. Everyone who I cared about was there.
That's everyone she cares about if you weren't listed.
Yeah, everyone else buzz off. It was... I had a good time.
Why were you happy? Not the people you care about, but what about the color must have popped the way you intended it to, or something to that effect?
Well, I think it's really special that you get to screen at all in a place with lots of seats on a screen that is that big, right? It's a sacred affair. Like, you know, I was in the 3 p.m. block or whatever, but I didn't give a damn. I was like, I'm seeing my film on screen, goddammit, right? And I was happy because it's not an easy thing to take something that you care about, to take something that you feel, to take something that you're working out through yourself as you are doing it, and then showing it that big to people who may or may not understand, right? And then you are trusting that they understand, and they understood. You know, regardless of whether or not, you know, people understand, I think you should still make what you want to make, and I think you should still take creative risks. I was happy because I went through it all from A to B. I did not give up even when it was really hard. There were parts of it that I wished had turned out differently. There were parts that I got mad. There were parts, you know, that I wanted to tear my hair out, or that I was really worried that people were going to think that I wasn't legit enough, or they were going to think that I was, you know, I don't know.
Why wouldn't they think you were legit enough?
That's an interesting question. And I guess at the time, I think it's a very common thing to feel like the need to impress, to feel the need that, you know, you have to be somebody. And at the time, I think I felt like I was trying to maybe give a good first impression, right? Or, you know, I maybe invented for myself that there are these expectations that were floating around that, you know, no one said to me, like, Nora, you have to do this or your career is... Or no one said that to me, right?
But you
know,
Eleanor.
No, they say Eleanor.
That's what
and you
they
also
would call like imposter syndrome, right? I think most creative people have that. Like, you're not enough, you're not good enough to do this. Even though you're doing it for years.
Just so you know.
Oh, thanks.
You're enough.
Thank you. And then, you know, now I realize that, you know, it's such a powerful thing to make work and then stand by it, right? And I think it's important to engage with constructive criticism. It's important to engage with advice from people who you really give a damn about, and who know that they care about you, or you deeply, deeply, deeply respect their opinion. But then sometimes, too, there's also so many different opinions. There's so many different takes on, you know, what means what and who means what. And so, like, even if you were to, you know, like, reach the pinnacle of the best, everyone unified in a singular opinion, I don't even know if that necessarily really exists, because so much of it is so personal, and so much of it is, you know, what people experience in their lives, and, you know, what their tastes are. And so now, you know, going into these next few projects, I'm thinking to myself, you know what, like, you know, it's important to do good work, but the only person I really have to, you know, impress is probably, you know, myself. And maybe not even impress, but at least, you know, be challenged by, because everything else is so fluid and so liquid and so at times nonsensical, that if the choices are betting on red or black, or this third color that's sometimes both, sometimes neither, right? Like you might as well bet on yourself, I'd say.
I think that's a great sentiment and great mindset to have. Yeah. Well, to wrap up the show, we usually ask our guests, who should we ask to be on the podcast?
Oh, I'm trying to think of who I know here.
I'm gonna make a joke while you're thinking, because I thought of I was
Go ahead.
Impress yourself by how much you express yourself, or by how you express yourself, huh? Because it's got the two S stuff in it. Are you checking your phone?
Yeah, because there's
they could do that.
Yeah,
the guests could do that.
No. There's the person who I.
So I don't think that's much of a joke.
What? No, it's just the way it sounds. You don't think is lovely?
It's
Impressed
lovely.
by yourself by how you express yourself.
Yeah, but it's not a joke.
It's a bumper sticker.
Sure, I can see that.
Bumper
on the back of my
stickers
car.
are a laugh to me. It's a sentiment.
I break for Fruit Cup, which is what what book is that from?
What? I break for
Fruit Cup. Yeah, I think it's. Is that the Ugly Bunnies? Something like that.
Idea.
Captain Underpants? I forget.
I have not read The Ugly Bunnies or Captain Underpants. I'm curious to get into Dogman and Underpants, the captain.
When I was a short call sub, all they wanted to do was talk about Dogman. They're just like, Dogman.
That's still true of 8-year-olds, I'm led to believe.
Yeah, off the top of my head here, I think you should talk to Aubrey Conant. I met her when I was at the Twin Cities Film Fest Actor and Industry Expo, and she just graduated from St. Olaf, and we had the same film professor, Rolf Belgium, who
Is he from Belgium?
No.
Belgium from
He's actually from Sweden.
And she has her short film, and she is a female director, and one of the only ones I have met out in the wild by myself. Which there's not a whole lot of us.
We had a female director 2 or 3 series ago. She's a first-time female director, and we were advertised her
Trisha
to us.
Berkey?
Trisha Berkey?
Yeah.
I know Trisha. I went to middle school with Trisha.
You what?
Yeah, Trisha and I go way back. She went to my birthday party.
In Duluth?
Yes.
Wow.
And she gave me a green piggy bank that I still have with the note from her in it. And so we went to middle school.
What does the note say?
It's private, Kyle.
It was something about my birthday. It was the birthday at Pottery Barn, and
birthday at Pottery Barn?
Yeah.
How are we just getting into this thing? We're supposed to do that
together, and I literally messaged her, and I was like, "Hello," because we lost touch during high school, and I'm just like, "Well, that's kind of crazy, Kyle?" And she was like, "Yeah," and I've been to her house, like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I like to think everyone knows me because I intend to be known.
Yeah.
But now,
especially on the podcast.
Hopefully, Nora, you are a little bit more known locally and abroad.
Well, we don't know what our next debate is.
Because of your friends who we've known longer try to change their date on us. What's the name of Andrew and Chris's company?
High Horse.
High Horse. Get off your high horse and figure out your dates. They're going to let me know tomorrow. This will come out like weeks after this. So
just throw them under the bus for right now.
They're on a high horse. They're fine.
Thank you for listening. For more JK Productions, find us on Instagram at JK Productions Team and on Facebook, JK Productions MN. Join us next time for another debate.